This tutorial is in American Sign Language with English voiceover. Very cool. Now that we've all purchased the pattern using the video tutorial that I made earlier, we can focus on how we can print the pattern. Because printing the pattern correctly is the first step towards having a successful foundation paper piecing block when you're complete. And again, if you don't know anything about foundation paper piecing, that's fine because this weekend, my friend and I will make another tutorial explaining exactly step by step what to do. So you've bought it, you've downloaded it, now we're going to print it. You'll be all set and ready. You can watch our final video and then go ahead and make your own. Maybe you're learning how to do this for the first time. Maybe you are an experienced foundation paper piecing and just watching these to enjoy yourselves. Either way, we're here and we're going to have some fun. So for this We Women pattern, or really any foundation paper piecing pattern, you have options on what type of paper you are going to use to piece your blocks. And so I'm going to explain three of these to you. Really, there are many other options for paper out there. If you have one you prefer, use that. This is just what I've used in the past. So I've used Carol Doak's foundation paper piecing paper. And the paper works great. It is very thin. You can buy it at the Quilt store, or you can get it at Amazon. It's thin and easy to print. And then once you've sewn the fabric onto it, it's fairly easy to remove the paper. One of the downsides of it is it's hard to see through the paper. It's not very transparent. Let me hold this up and see if you can tell. So it's not very transparent, which means that sometimes when you're making more complex foundation paper piecing blocks, it is helpful to be able to see through the paper, but you can still use it and you'll be fine. Another option is to use regular printer paper. And when you choose your printer paper, we're not looking for a high quality, extra thick printer paper. You're looking for one of the more inexpensive, thinner printer papers because the higher quality or the thicker your paper, it makes it very difficult to take it off later. And sometimes if the paper is too thick, when you're trying to take it off, it can actually ruin your stitches because it can pull them and unravel your thread. So that's just something to be careful for with printer paper, but look for something that's easily tearable. Sometimes if you get like a recycled printer paper, that helps. I actually have never used printer paper myself, but I know many people do use it. This is my favorite so far that I've tried. Unfortunately, it is more expensive, at least from my point of view. It's pretty expensive. And it's June Taylor's Perfect Piecing paper. And the primary reason why I like it is, let me get it out and show you. It's a little hard to see, but it's much more transparent, especially once you have fabric on it. So for me, as I'm doing the process of foundation paper piecing and folding, I can see through it better. I can see the fabric line and the printing lines. I also personally think it's a little easier to remove the paper. Um, but really what I just mentioned, these three types, there are many, many other types out there on the market. So please experiment. Maybe you can share comments, what you use, what you like. And today, for my sample, I'll be using the June Taylor's Perfect Piecing Paper to print. For printing, you can use your printer at home. And typically there are two types of home printers. There's, laser printers that tends to use heat to seal the ink onto the paper. And then the other kind that we often have at home are inkjet printers, which in my mind, it kind of splatters the ink onto the paper. I really am not a printer expert, but that's what happens in my imagination. So with a laser printer, there are pros and cons. With a laser printer, you have to be very careful when you're ironing. because the ink is heat sealed onto the paper, as you iron it, sometimes the ink can loosen and transfer to your iron. And then when you iron another piece of fabric, it can transfer the ink onto the next thing of fabric. This has happened to me. You don't want it to happen to you. So what I do is, because I have a laser printer, I only iron on the fabric side, and then I'm usually fine because I can go fabric to fabric as long as I don't touch the paper with my iron. For inkjet printers, I don't have one, but what I've heard is that if you accidentally get the paper wet, the ink will smear, and then that could also ruin your fabric and transfer. So when you use inkjet printer pieces, it's fine. You don't have to worry about heat, but you do need to make sure that it doesn't get moisture because the ink may start smearing, which may, affect your fabric. So just keep those two things in mind. So now we're just going to go ahead and print. We've bought the pattern from Etsy we've downloaded. So just open the pattern on your computer. Right now, my file is in my downloads folder, so it's easy for me to find. And just open it up. You'll notice on my computer, when I click on it and it pops up with Adobe Acrobat, mine has the Pro version. Um, it's really important that you open this file in a software application that reads PDFs as opposed to opening it online or, if you've uploaded it to Drive, for example, and print from Drive. Sometimes you end up with problems with how it prints in this sizing. Or sometimes if you print directly from your phone, the sizing also will get messed up. So I strongly recommend that you use some type of PDF software. Um, and then especially as we're doing a quilt swap, your pattern blocks, you want them to be a precise size because it doesn't matter as much if you're making all the same size. But if you end up swapping with someone else who has a larger size, it becomes a problem because we want everyone in the swap to have the same size ultimately. Um, and again, I'm showing you parts of this pattern. Ordinarily, I wouldn't do that, but I was given permission by Brewing Campbell, the pattern designer, to make this tutorial. So I'm just going to show this little small segment of her pattern. Once you've printed your paper, this is one way to check to make sure that the size is correct. So that whether you make it for yourself or make it for other people, you have the correct size. And it needs to be exactly on the 1 inch lines. Like you don't want anything even slightly off. Breen Campbell mentioned that she had some experiences with people who printed and thought they hit the 1 inch marker, but still their pattern ended up being a little too small or a little too large. So she posted this graphic, which I've screenshot and shown here, that shows that if you print one of the pages that has the arm segment, if you print that page first, you can check the 1 inch square mark, but then you can also check the length or the height of the side of the piece that has the arm, and it should be 8.5 inches. So for me, when I was checking the pattern, the first arm segment that I found was on page 13. So I'm going to print page 13 first, and then I will check make sure it's all the correct sizes, and then move on to printing the other pages. So I'm going to select, your menu may look a little bit different than mine, but you're going to find a place that says, select certain pages to print. Type in 13 and then find somewhere on your printer window, it should have sizes to print, like shrink to fit actual size. Personally, I always choose custom scale and type 100%. I do know some people say they just print actual size and that means 100%. For me personally, typing in 100 just makes me feel more comfortable and it's always worked for me up until this point, so I'm sticking with it. So I'm going to load my special paper into my printer and click print. Now I get to wait while it wakes up. All right, we waited, we printed, and then I picked up the paper and came to my sewing room / dining room, tiny house over here. And we're just going to measure to make sure it's the right size. So I'm going to start with that 1 inch block like I described before. Up here in the top corner, lay my ruler on it and just check to make sure that it precisely fits a 1 inch square. So I'm looking at it, and it fits perfectly. So I think this is good to go. However, sometimes things look good to my human eyes, but then when I make them, mistakes can happen. So just to double check, following Breen's suggestions, what I'm going to do is get this page 13 that has the arm segment on it, and the height of that should be 8.5 inches. So I'm going to get my larger ruler and measure that, and it's 8.5 inches. So I've tested it against that 1 inch square and 8.5 inches. They measured up, and I feel confident printing. I'm going to make sure I keep the same printing settings and then print all the pages. So hopefully this has given you an idea and solved some problems and makes it easy for you to print.